Next up on Extra Time After Hours, drama at Red Bull Arena that never seemed to end, and franchise history for the Seattle Sounders. We've got all the highlights and the feedback from our experts next on MLSsoccer.com. Well, greetings, and welcome to this edition of Extra Time After Hours on MLSsoccer.com. Thanks for staying up with us a little bit past midnight here on the East Coast, here with the guys from Extra Time Radio. It's Simon Borg and Greg Lawless. I'm Nick Furshaw. Guys, take a deep breath. We have just finished watching the second leg of the Western Conference semifinal, Seattle and Real Salt Lake, a dramatic one out there at Rio Tinto Stadium. And that followed one of the best playoff games you're ever going to see. Certainly one of the most entertaining games anyway, DC United and the New York Red Bulls. We're going to get to all that, all the highlights and the feedback from the locker rooms from both games. But I want to mention you can reach out to us, tweet your questions at Extra Time Radio. And guys, before we look at franchise history for the Seattle Sounders, I want to get your feedback about this night in general. The MLS playoffs continue to live up to the hype, especially on this second night of the conference.
Look, the reality here is that it's all about the late drama. That's what makes it dramatic, is you go into the 80th minute, the 85th minute, whatever it is, and you get this incredible goal that comes out of nowhere. Both goals tonight, by the way, with DC with the 1-0 victory and then Seattle with the 1-0 victory, both of them really nice goals. Different types of goals in terms of their beauty. The stunning one from Martinez is what people will talk about. However, the one from De Leon is just as nice a goal in terms of the way that they worked the goal. But it's all about the late drama, and that's really what you want in the playoffs. Everything is tight, and that one mistake, you can make one little mistake, and everything turns.
Yeah. Greg, for me, it's the fact, and people have already known this, the teams that hosted that second game, the so-called home field advantage in leg 2, didn't count for anything in this round of the playoffs. All 4 teams that hosted that second game, out.
Yeah, so much was made about who hosts the first leg, who hosts the second leg, especially when you look at that DC United New York Red Bull series where it was sort of flipped on its head. Nonetheless, you mentioned it, DC United with the win tonight at a very clean Red Bull Arena. They got out more than shovels for this one out at Red Bull Arena. DC got the win. We're going to start, though, with the Seattle Sounders, who just a few minutes ago wrapped up their first franchise series postseason win. They've gotten a win before, an individual game, but this is the first time they're actually moving on. So they're going to play the LA Galaxy in the Western Conference Final, with all due respect to the Quakes and Real Salt Lake. 2 great teams this season, the Sounders and the Galaxy, beginning on Sunday. That's sort of a match made in heaven.
It's in many ways. I think that if you think about it from a marketing standpoint, you've got this huge market in Seattle and everything that they bring as well. And then in the Galaxy, it's Robbie Keane and David Beckham and Landon Donovan, and I'll throw another one in there, Mike McGee, Mr. Playoffs himself for the LA Galaxy. This is a huge game. And these 2 teams, by the way, this is a rivalry now. You know, I'm not that Beckham would say it. Beckham would still say it's Chivas and all that.
Right.
But this has become a rivalry over the years, especially because, you know what, Seattle just can't seem to beat them.
Yeah, Seattle, we mentioned it, their first franchise series win in franchise history. They've been in the playoffs every year. They've been on the MLS map, but it took all the way till tonight. They were at Rio Tinto Stadium, scoreless on aggregate going into this one. And there are no 2 better teams that can play a scoreless draw the way these 2 play. But they had to break it open eventually. Brad Evans, Freddie Montero, and then this guy Mario Martinez, Greg, a guy who earlier in the season said, where's my playing time?
And he did. He came in on loan earlier in the season, actually, and he had played so well for Honduras at the Olympics, and that was where I think we all watched him. He was taking every free kick for the Olympic Honduran team that kind of thrilled a lot of people over in London. And people were saying, wow, this guy's coming to Seattle? And then you were thinking at that time, the amazing thing was, everyone kind of knew.
They
didn't need him. He was playing well, and there was no space for him, really. Where was he going to play? Well, he comes out. He didn't start the last game. He starts this one, and he does a fine job, and what a goal.
And fans who watched that Canada-Honduras game, the one that finished, what was it, 7-1 or 8-1, they'll remember his left foot. He has
yeah,
an
of course,
unbelievable
right.
left foot, and he's
Yes.
all class. Now, interesting to me is that Ziggy Schmidt at halftime said, we got to move quicker. And he slows the play down. But when the ball's on that left foot, it's just class. Special things happen, and we saw it
He
there.
had some very nice free kicks whipped in and almost scored right off the bat in this game. Nick Raimondo, who played well again for Real Salt Lake, the hero in game 1 of this series, came up with a big save early on against Mario Martinez. You guys, don't forget, who was he in the lineup for? Everybody's making the fuss about who he was in the lineup for.
Mauro Rosales.
The guy who was
Yeah.
injured for this game,
But
Mario
wait,
Martinez
hang on,
steps
hang
in
on,
very well.
hang on. I understand what you're
Yes.
saying, but let's not
Filled
get
in
let's not
admirably.
get crazy. Here.
Here's the free kick,
And
by the
say,
way.
Here's
this
the
is
free kick here. Raimondo, gets enough of it, pushes it off the crossbar. Raimondo, again, played well. He's going to have another save that we'll look at a little bit later, but right off the bat, you knew Mario Martinez was going to be a dangerous guy.
Yes, but again, I think that if Rosales is healthy, he's starting.
Agreed,
That's
yeah.
the reality of this. And what will Ziggy do now? Do you start them both?
Well, what you got to bring up now is Christian Tiffert. He's the guy to me, and I said it in the first game. He doesn't do enough for me. He doesn't do enough for Seattle.
what
doesn't
more?
produce enough.
What more do you want from him?
He's not doing nothing. Do something.
What more? Like what? What do you want? What do you want?
I
him
want
to do?
plays like Mario Martinez just gave you. I want a
goal.
special play,
You want
a special
goal.
pass, a special free kick. Something. Produce something during the game. I don't care about your simple horizontal passes or once in a while you send the cross in. I don't care about that stuff. Mario Martinez showed in this game he deserves to take preference over Christian
Because of
Tiffert.
the goal? That's why you think that?
Because over the course of the game, he did enough.
There's
He
no
did
way.
enough in that game. He produced
no
enough
way.
to deserve a second start. By the way, that's his first start in MLS. He only had 40 minutes total
but
in regular season
That's fine,
play.
but it's not going to happen.
Sounders-
Tiffert's going to get the start.
Sounders fans surely can argue that. Let us know what you think at Extra Time Radio on Twitter. You mentioned Christian Tiffert, who started this game, got a lot of minutes, and caught the brunt of some of the physical parts of this game. Actually got his head almost cracked open at some point in this game, thanks to Jamison Olave, the big center back for Real Salt Lake, came off the field bloodied and bashed. There you can see it right there. I don't even think he got a call on this one, Greg, but nonetheless, had to clean himself up and leave the field, get stitched up. Came back on. We saw Tony Beltran get cut up later in this game. Nick Raimondo got his face
the first leg?
smashed in the first game.
That's
This was
3
a rough one.
stitches and a broken nose.
Some might say Tiffert got what was coming to him after he broke Nick Raimondo's nose in that first game, which I still contend he
was
knew what
not
he
it.
was doing there. He knew what he was doing.
A couple more questions here about the Seattle Sounders, then we'll talk about RSL and sort of their legacy of the season and what they do now. Ziggy Schmidt finally gets that big series win in Seattle. We've talked about whether or not he could get it done and then whether or not they would blow up the team. Even he's used that kind of rhetoric. He gets the big win here, Simon. Now can he carry it on? He's going up against Bruce Arena.
To me, the old Seattle Sounders don't get a win like this. There's something different about this Sounders team. You know, with the minutes going by and their attackers not producing, Montero and Eddie Johnson did very little in this game. Yeah. And Eddie Johnson, we wonder what his fitness is still. But the
Montero
old
did play the pass, by the way.
Fair enough. But the old Seattle team, under these circumstances, with Real Salt Lake bearing down in adverse conditions, the wind was wreaking havoc with this game. That you would have seen on the field the team start to fade, and they didn't.
But you know what's interesting about when you talk about sort of the old team and the new team? I would also contend that the old RSL team would not have lost this game. And I would say that
This
there are
could
two
be a
teams
sort of
that
team-
are sort of, you know, they're like, if you're looking at balance of power, let's say, between the two teams, one is on the rise and one is, you know, their core has gotten a little bit older. They're, you know, in RSL, they're still a very good team, obviously, and we've seen that. But they don't quite have the weapons all in place that are so cohesive.
The contrast is Mario Martinez, 23-year-old, getting the decisive goal, whereas Real Salt Lake, with all their elder statesmen, they can't put it together. They're on an unbelievable goalless streak here.
Well, I mean, like, did you see Javier Morales in this game?
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
He wasn't there.
Another look here at the game winner, the one moment really of brilliance in this game, and you mentioned it right off the top, Greg. It's either going to be a mistake or a moment like this
Yeah,
that
you
separates
need
these two
something.
teams. And I agree with you. It's sort of a two trains passing in the night here. Real Salt Lake at the end of their run, and now the Seattle Sounders maybe on the move. But let's look forward to the Western Conference final before we touch base with Real Salt Lake on their impression of the season. LA and Seattle. You want to make a prediction right off the top? They're in the night game. You can catch the details on MLSsoccer.com.
Go ahead.
I'll make the prediction. LA Galaxy in this one because I think that right now, LA, and Bruce Arena said it himself, they are the best team in the league. Bruce Arena said it. He said, we've been the best team in the league since July. And Arena has come, and I believe it. And I believe they are now clicking on all cylinders, whereas Seattle, losing Mauro Rosales, they're just inserting Mario Martinez. Eddie Johnson didn't look himself.
Yeah.
I think Seattle, they're not in their best moment. So because of that, I think LA really can do the damage here.
We got a couple Twitter questions. Again, you can tweet your questions to @ExtraTimeRadio. Han John on Twitter asks, better goalkeeper, Raimondo or Michael Sperning? I'll take it another level. Michael Sperning in this next series should have the edge over a guy like Josh Saunders, I would assume. Michael Spurning's a solid goalkeeper and a guy who's played very admirably in place of Casey Keller this season.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's really one better or worse between Raimondo and Sperning. I think that they both were really good. I thought Sperning tonight was fantastic, and yet Raimondo had the best save of the night with that diving, just a couple of fingertips. It was like he got his fingernails on it to push it around. Here's the save right there. What a shot by Evans.
That might be the best save of the postseason.
And then, I mean, yeah, this is an incredible, because he's going the other way, and he does have a decent look at it, but what a save from Raimondo.
But Nick, you made the best point about the contrast between Raimondo and Sperning.
Thank you.
Raimondo, you said, has to throw his whole body, whole body at stuff. Whereas you look at a guy like Sperning, he makes it look so easy.
He does.
He just
make it look easy,
literally, he jumps forward here and there, and he makes it look easy.
Yeah,
Just takes up so much space.
That was a free kick, actually. That he just, it looked. I think all of us in the office kind of thought, "Ooh, wait, I'm like, oh no, wait a second."
It's effortless.
It's
effortless.
He sees it, and it helps that he's big. He can see over everyone. It's not necessarily the best free kick in the world from Morales, but he gets over there so quickly, it's done.
Yeah, Sperning swallows up so much of that goal. Again, Seattle Sounders and LA Galaxy on Sunday. Real Salt Lake going home really quickly. We've touched on it a little bit, sort of maybe the passing of the torch for Jason Christ and his guys. Doesn't mean he can't go out and get younger players, better players if he wants to replace some of those older guys that have been around since the 2009 Cup run. But Real Salt Lake, what do they need? What do they need to do now?
I think they need to get younger, for me, and they need to really.
Your buddy, your guy, Luis Gil.
Luis Gil came off the bench in this
all
one.
right?
Look, I think they need to take a hard look at Javier Morales. I know they're loyal to this guy. He's done a lot for the club, but you wonder whether maybe he's a guy who's coming off the bench now, beginning next year. They need a more dynamic player. And then up top, Alvaro Saborio, Espindola, I don't know, can you still go with both of them? You need to get younger and more dynamic, I believe.
So still some questions for Real Salt Lake. One last question via Twitter on this topic from Andy Smith, and this is a good point here. He says, how important is the extra day of rest the Galaxy have over the Sounders for Sunday's game? The LA Galaxy wrapped up their semifinal series last night. Sounders get 24 hours less.
I mean,
Does it matter?
It matters to an extent, but this is the playoffs. They've got 3 days of rest themselves for Seattle. They're going to go home. They have enough rest. It can't matter.
It does matter.
At this time of year, it can't matter?
It does, because the game that Seattle just finished
if you
playing.
can't get up for this game.
No, it's not about getting up. It's about what your body can give you.
Yeah, fine, I understand that, but you still have to get up for it, Simon. It's not just what your body can give you. Players, athletes, they do amazing things sometimes when their body can't give them any more, and they do. And for Seattle, it might actually be more helpful for them that they're going on the road, where they don't necessarily have to push. They don't have to be as urgent as they would necessarily when they're at home, where you're expected to go into attack. They can go to the Galaxy, go to the Home Depot Center, and maybe just sit back a little bit, not expend as much energy as they would if they had to go home and play at CenturyLink.
Well, again, the first leg of the Western Conference Final on Sunday. You can log on to MLSsoccer.com for all the details and all the coverage as it ramps up towards the weekend. We're going to take a break, guys, and when we come back, we'll answer some more Twitter questions. And we got to talk about this Eastern Conference semifinal game between the New York Red Bulls and DC United, one of the best postseason games and one of the most interesting postseason series we've ever seen in the MLS playoffs. We'll be right back on Extra Time After Hours.
Off woodwork and in! Shot! Goal! Room to shoot. David Beckham! Oh, goodness me! Now there's almost a little flag. 4-3! Who else? He is simply clutch. Plenty of options, one of which is the absolute fantastic strike!
Voting is now open for the AT&T Goal of the Year.
Vote early, vote often on MLSsoccer.com.
Back now on this edition of Extra Time After Hours on MLSsoccer.com. Thanks for staying up late with us here on the East Coast and on the West Coast. If you're a Seattle fan, you're probably wide awake at this point. We've
You're
covered
at the bar
that.
right now.
You're probably more than wide awake. We've been asking for your Twitter questions. You can let us know at Extra Time Radio. We got one a little bit ago that's wondering what this piece of paper says in between Simon and Greg there. It's wondering where Jason Skeeny is.
This is my tribute actually to Guns N' Roses when they hold up the "Where's Izzy" sign in the middle of "Don't Cry"
That's totally
video.
topical and relevant at this point. Speaking of topical and relevant, the New York Red Bulls, man, they've been trying to get this MLS Cup title for so long. And could they beat DC United in the second leg of the Eastern Conference semifinals on Thursday night? If you can hear the tone of my voice, you know where this is going if you're a New York Red Bulls fan. This was one of the best postseason games you're ever going to see. Everybody on Twitter was blown up about this one. In the end, DC United gets a 1-0 win in this one. Before we get to all the highlights, and there were a bunch, Simon, New York Red Bulls fans, they're sort of depressed as you can be on this Thursday night.
They're depressed, but I think their team did enough to go through in this series. They did enough. They had their chances on goal, and I think this game was one you just got to throw away. Just bad luck. And everyone says, there's a curse on this team that 17 years in running. Now we're going into year 18 for them. They can't win a trophy. But I think they did enough on the field to earn it. I wouldn't be that heartbroken if I'm a Red Bulls fan, because I believe on the field they showed enough.
Well, let's take a look at.
Wait a second. They showed enough for what? To what? Be happy?
No, they showed enough that they were better. To me, the Red Bull fan going home knows they are better than this DC United team.
It doesn't matter.
I know, but
they lost.
Freakish circumstances.
What freakish circumstances? They put 11 players on the field. The other side put 11 players on the field.
For parts of the game, they had 11 players.
And then there were 10, and there were 10 after all the red.
Greg.
What's freakish? Two teams enter, one team leaves. Isn't that how it goes?
It's very poetically.
It's very. So what is freakish about that?
Come on, you saw the circumstances.
Yes, I did. I saw two teams.
The penalty
get on
kick scenario, you rarely see that happen. It happens to them.
Was
in this
it wrong?
game. No.
Well,
what's the problem?
Let's get to the highlights and then we can look at it here. The decisive moment of this game, I think, really, aside from the goal that we will get to, is a Kenny Cooper penalty kick against. We didn't show the foul there, but Bill Hamid actually got a foul for taking down Kenny Cooper and was shown a red card. So
Joe confused Kenny is.
Yeah, doesn't know what's going on. Joe Willis comes in there, the man from DU. He looks like a guy from Fleet Foxes or something. He's got a nice beard going. But look, so he gives up the goal on the first one. Kenny Cooper strikes it, but three guys from the Red Bulls are in the box. So Mark Geiger, the head ref, calls encroachment on this one. You could say maybe Thierry Henry was the first one in there. Either way,
maybe he was.
He was. So
and by the way, Brandon McDonald from DC United is pointing at Thierry Henry before the referee makes the call.
Either way, it comes back, the smoke clears a little bit, and Joe Willis steps up and makes the save. Kenny Cooper cannot come through in the clutch here, and it's going to come back to haunt the Red Bulls in this one.
It's going to come back to haunt them all off season, that's for sure. All right, Simon.
Yeah.
Joe Willis, thoughts?
No, I didn't think that DC were going to miss a beat after he came in. In my opinion, they give the starting job to Bill Hamid because he's the up-and-comer and he's the guy who I guess is the incumbent number one. But Joe Willis, every time he's been in the nets for DC, I believe he's their better keeper. And by better I mean the most consistent. He's not making mistakes. He won't make the unbelievable reflex save. And by the way, Bill Hamid made one of those during the game. He may not be capable of that, but I think over the course of a game, he's more consistent than Bill Hamid is.
I mean, here's one of those amazing saves when Dax McCarty has a great chance to put it. By the way, Dax McCarty had two sitters, basically, if you would, or just alone in front of goal that he should have put away.
Well, this is a sitter?
What? In some ways, that's a sitter, yeah. You're alone in front of the goal, just the goalkeeper. At this level, he needs to put that away. It's a brilliant save by Bill Hamid. It wasn't an easy chance. I shouldn't say it. It's a sitter. Yeah, he needs to finish that one, and I'm sure he would say the same thing. But in terms of the goalkeeping, Joe Willis came out. I love what he said after the game when he said, I remembered, and someone told me about it, about the, I remembered when Kenny Cooper took the two shots against when he was with Portland against Bill Hamid. Remember?
Yeah, last year.
He had the two, and Bill Hamid jumped off the line twice, and the referee blew it again and again, and finally,
there's that clip right here.
There it is. There's the first one.
If you remember this one, so Kenny Cooper had two saved by Bill Hamid before Jack Jewsbury actually put it away, but
There's
You
the
mentioned
second
it.
one.
Joe Willis remembered that. Pat Onstad mentioned it to him, the goalkeepers coach out of DC United, filed it away and made the save. In this
And what he mentioned it to him was that Cooper goes one way, and the second shot he went the other way.
Yeah.
And he nailed it. So great work and great coaching all around with Onstad being involved in that as well.
Now, I know a lot of people were saying, why didn't Thierry Henry take this
Oh, here
penalty
we go.
kick? But he's not the Red Bulls penalty kick taker. He's not there. Kenny Cooper took all 3 penalty kicks this year for the Red Bulls. He was 10 for 10 throughout his whole MLS career.
Except for the 2 in Portland.
Except for those 2, which didn't count.
but they didn't
Neither
count.
of those 2 counted. So Cooper had the ball there. So I know people want to put it on Henry. And, sure, what you can call on Henry is the encroachment. That he probably should have known that Cooper does this stutter step that a lot of people have criticized now.
It's a heavy stutter step.
Heavy stutter step. And he, his own players encroach. Now, I reached out to Peter Walton of the the Professional Referees Organization, and he explained, look, there's a little bit of encroachment on most every penalty kick. But significant encroachment is what needs to be called. And in that case, there was significant encroachment. Referees are instructed to move into the penalty area about 2 yards. And if they see any players get into their sight line, within those 2 yards, then it's significant encroachment. And it was the right call by Mark Geiger.
Mark Geiger's called this one before. DC United fans will remember this. He actually took away Dwayne De Rosario's 100th goal at the time. It was a PK earlier this season, called that one back for a similar encroachment on Hamdi Salihi. So sort of interesting there. Mark Geiger plays a role again in this one.
But it had to be Kenny Cooper in this. When you
It had
think
to
about
be,
all of the talk about Kenny Cooper going into this, was he going to start? It had to be him in this one.
Well, let's get to the DC United goal because that's what really decided this game. You can say whatever you want about Kenny Cooper, and we'll get to some of his post-game reactions in the locker room.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, lack thereof. But the game winner right here, it's Nick DeLeon, the rookie out of Louisville, a guy who's played so well this season, but it's also Robbie Russell, guys, a guy who came over from RSL, sets this one up. Nick DeLeon right in front of all those fans that drove up from DC again, that Hardy bunch, 5 buses. Just love this moment.
This was an amazing moment for DC United fans and the team, obviously. And Nick DeLeon, by the way, rookie, coming in, having a terrific, great finish in this one. Robbie Russell would not be on the field if Andy Nahar had not gotten the red card in the first leg.
Robbie Russell's battled a lot of injuries this year. He's been around the block. He has not played a lot of minutes. He played a lot of minutes tonight, and he set up that game winner. Not a lot of chances, quite honestly, for DC United in this game. They took their one chance, and they really got it. A lot more chances for the New York Red Bulls. You mentioned that Dax McCarty sitter. There was a sort of a sequence of plays in the beginning, around the 28th or 29th minute, where Thierry Henry had some great chances.
Not
at this
easy
one
looks, not clean looks.
It wasn't a clean
They weren't
look.
clean.
It wasn't a clean
Let's
look.
take a
You're
look
right.
here. Simon, take us through it.
So the ball gets in the box and it just ricochets and eventually the ball finds its way to Henry, I think that was, who takes the shot. Ball stays alive because Cahill keeps it alive, gets back on Henry's foot. He does well to get a shot off the Djokovic's chest, and that final shot, Lynn Perry thought he'd do better with it.
Look, they're not clean looks, Simon. You're right. They're not totally clean looks, but at this point, Thierry Henry, this is when you're the man. This is it.
Yeah.
Take it on your shoulders. You're taking the team on your shoulders. These are the chances he needs to put away. That one, why doesn't he hit that one time rather than waiting to drag it
Because
back?
there was a
and
player
then go to
in front
left
of
foot?
him. Look, if you want to call out Henry, there was a header in the second half.
There was a header as well.
That perhaps he could have done better on. But look, just wasn't clicking for New York in this game. Now, fans could point out that first game, the first leg at RFK, maybe the Red Bulls should have pushed a little harder, maybe done a little more to get a goal.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the result would have been different if they had played last night with the snow?
I don't think it would have been better for the Red Bulls. So if we saw them play well, or I
So you're
think
saying they would have
played well
lost
enough,
anyway?
They
probably
probably
anyway.
would have not made it through.
I want to take a look at a couple other key plays in this game. You mentioned Thierry Henry sort of taking it on his shoulders. There's a late free kick in this game where everybody was upset on Twitter, where Roy Miller stepped up and took the free kick from the top of the box. Found out later that, yes, this is a left-footed angle shot, Greg. This isn't Thierry Henry's shot necessarily.
Exactly.
But everybody upset that the superstar didn't take it.
Well, and you can understand that because Thierry Henry is the superstar. This is when you make your millions of dollars in these moments. Now, I understand he's absolutely correct, and Thierry Henry came out and said why he didn't shoot this penalty, and he's right. From that position, it's a left-footed shot that's going to have a better chance of getting over the wall and dipping away from the goalkeeper. And that's the key. You're dipping away from the goalkeeper toward the near post. If Thierry Henry does it, the ball is most likely dipping toward the goalkeeper. It makes it easier for the goalkeeper to make the save. However, and I get that, and you want a left-footed shooter, right? Terrific. But if you want that left-footed shooter, you want Messi.
Right. It
You
was
don't want
Roy
Roy
Miller.
Miller.
It was Roy Miller's
That's
first
different.
free kick of the year.
Now, if you're trying to surprise someone, don't surprise him that way. That's my take on that one.
One other topic in this game, that was Rafa Marquez, who started on the back line despite a calf strain that had limited him recently. He came out of that first leg, if you recall. Started this game and played well, guys, in the early going, but right here, smacks into Chris Pontius, goes up high with his fist. DC United players asking for a red card on this one. Ended up with the yellow, and then later, Pontius again, right there. That's a second yellow for Rafa Marquez, and he's gone. So we had seen Bill Hamid sent off, and the Red Bulls had an advantage at that point. Rafa Marquez gets a second yellow. He's sent off. This sends everybody into a upheaval about Rafa Marquez.
Yeah.
Will this be the last we see of him, considering he's been such an embattled player since he came over?
I mean, we've seen so many incidents now where everyone's like, okay, is this the last we've seen of him? Is this now the end for Rafa Marquez? And he keeps coming back. Look, I think he plans on coming back to the Red Bulls next year. Talks about a loan deal to Mexico in the offseason to stay fit, then come back to the Red Bulls. I don't think he has any intentions of going anywhere. And if you speak to the Red Bulls, I don't think they have any intentions of moving him, frankly. So I think he will come back, but that was the turning point of the game. His sending off, more so to me than the penalty kick, was the turning point, because the Red Bulls were commanding play with 11 on 10. You would have liked their chances.
And both of his yellow cards, honestly, come because he's slow.
Yeah.
He's
late
a split second late, or he's slow to get off the ground on a head, and he's just late. And so, because we also saw the elbow on Pontius, right?
Just
the
late
fist.
to get in the
so
air,
It's not a fist. It ends up
Balled
being
up
his
fist.
arm, is what it is. But what it is that he's late to make the jump. Pontius out jumps him, and he's up earlier, and that makes a difference. So you're right. He played very well in the beginning until that, but you can see that on the defensive side, he's a tad slow.
One last bit from the New York Red Bulls locker room. We heard Rafa Marquez actually spoke to the media in English for the first time all season. Didn't say a whole lot, and we also found out that Kenny Cooper did not speak to the media because Tim Cahill stepped in and said he doesn't have to talk tonight. On the DC United side, let's give him some due credit. Got a tweet here from Henry Thomas who says, when is anyone going to respect DC United, their heart and soul this year? And I got to say, dealing with adversity in this series, considering they had the quote-unquote home field advantage taken away from them, they had the fans come up, they had so much great support. They didn't win this one necessarily very pretty, but they got it done, and now they're going to the Eastern Conference Final. And they could, guys, have a chance to host MLS Cup if they can get past the Houston Dynamo.
They would host the Cup if they get past Houston, because they actually had a better regular season record than both Seattle and Los Angeles. I actually traded texts with Ben Olsen just before
you're such
coming
a
on
name
this.
dropper.
Hey, I'm doing my research, right? And you know what he told me? This bunch never gives up. That was the quote, and it's a perfect quote for what this team is. They, didn't matter that the game got rained out. And when he said this bunch, he wasn't just talking about his team. He was also talking about his fans. And the fans didn't give up either. And that's the most amazing thing, is that the fans came back up. They got into Red Bull Arena. They made their noise. And it was so fitting that De Leon scored his goal on that side.
Everybody had him dead in the water, DC, back when D-Row. Now, back when D-Row was injured. Now they're talking, now does D-Row come back against his old team, the Houston Dynamo, to help DC get to that MLS Cup at home? So, look, Ben Olsen's spirit is infiltrated the whole club.
Yes.
He is now the face of that team. As much as Chris Pontius is the captain, D-Row may be the MVP, but the face of that franchise is Olsen.
So the first leg of the Eastern Conference Final, DC United and the Houston Dynamo. That's on Sunday. You can log on to MLSsoccer.com for all the details. Before we get to one last Twitter question that I think is maybe our best question of the night, predictions for this first leg. They're down at BBVA Compass Stadium. Dynamo have been so good. They took it to Sporting Kansas City in the semifinals. DC United, Houston Dynamo, Sunday at BBVA. What do you got, Simon?
I mean, I'm putting my money on Houston for this game, because Houston, they know Dominic Kinnear will sit down. He'll come up with a game plan, and he'll figure out exactly where the weaknesses of DC are. And so I trust him to come up with the game that will finally foil DC United, then to go on the road at RFK for the second game, you got to trust Houston getting to MLS Cup.
What do you think, Greg?
You know, the back line for DC has really been the surprise for me. And so I'm going to jump on the DC bandwagon in this one. I think that their back line has been, Brandon McDonald has proven so effective. When Nahar is back, he'll be able to get up and down. Robbie Russell,
But he
when
probably
needs to come in.
Everyone is
We'll
saying
see
he
if Nahar-
may not be back for
We'll
that
see.
first game.
We'll see.
Nahar.
Okay, but we'll see. But I'm going to go with DC because I think their back line will be able to handle better than Kansas City's back line, surprisingly. We'll be able to handle the big bruising stuff that you know is going to be coming from the Houston Dynamo.
And we should mention about Nahar, he was suspended for this game against New York because of he got a red card in the first game, throwing the ball at the referee. There's a hearing, according to Ben Olsen, scheduled for tomorrow, in which they will determine whether there is any further punishment. But he said he expects at least one more game.
Well, both conference finals on Sunday. Last thing before we get out of here, a nice question here from Dan Fleming. When you look at these conference finals and the last teams left standing, guys, what coach would you want? Ziggy Schmidt, Bruce Arena, Dominic Kinnear, or the new guy on the block, Ben Olsen? Greg, we'll start with you.
Oh, you know what?
That's three heavyweights. And a guy who was probably a candidate for Coach of the Year this year.
Yeah. Who would I want? I think that I would want.
Because you're good. You're friends with Dom, so watch what you say.
You know what? I think I would want. I'm
What is
going to
this?
go with Bruce. I'm going to go with Bruce Arena.
Okay. What do you think?
Dominic Kinnear, hands down.
Why?
I think because whatever team you give him, he'll figure out a way to put it together. Every year that he's gone deep in the playoffs, he's had a different team, different parts, players at different times in their career, and he's figured out a way to make it work. So I would trust him with any team I had.
There you go. Four of the best coaches in the game left standing in the postseason, the conference finals. The first leg, anyway, are on Sunday. You can log on to MLSsoccer.com for all the details. Inching ever closer to MLS Cup. We don't know where it's going to be, but we're going to get a good guess after this next weekend. Let's get out of here, guys. It's getting pretty late here on the East Coast for the latest edition of Extra Time After Hours. We'll be back with a special edition of the podcast on Friday. We're going to say all the same stuff. This is going to sound a little bit better, and we'll wear more relaxed clothes then. You can catch that on Friday. For the guys here, Simon Borg and Greg Lawless, and our technical staff that's been working all day, make sure to log on to MLSsoccer.com for all the coverage of the 2012 MLS Cup playoffs. See you around next time.